There's a moment. You've felt it before. Maybe you don't want to admit it. Your heart rate explodes. Your vision narrows. Your hands go cold. Your legs feel like they're not yours anymore. Someone is in your face, or worse, multiple people. And every cell in your body is screaming at you to freeze, to back down, to find an exit. That moment is the moment that reveals who you actually are. Not who you think you are, not who you tell people you are, who you actually are. Most men fail that moment, not because they're weak, but because nobody ever taught them what to do inside it. They were taught to avoid conflict, to de-escalate, to walk away. And look, sometimes that's wisdom. But sometimes walking away isn't an option. Sometimes the threat comes to you, and in that moment, all the motivational quotes in the world mean absolutely nothing. Genghis Khan built the largest empire in human history, not by being the biggest, and not by being the most naturally gifted, and not by being born into power. He built it by mastering exactly this, the ability to function at full capacity when the situation in front of him was trying to break him. And the lessons he and his warriors lived by are some of the most applicable things a man can absorb today, especially when it comes to physical confrontation, real danger, and the kind of pressure that separates men who've trained their minds from men who haven't. This video is going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be raw, and it might say things you've never heard said directly to you. That's the point. If that's what you want, real, no soft content that actually builds something in you, subscribe right now before we go any further. Alright, let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand about physical confrontation, and I mean understand it at a biological level, is that the fear you feel is not weakness. It is your body doing exactly what it was designed to do. When you're facing someone who wants to hurt you, your adrenal glands dumped cortisol and adrenaline into your bloodstream within milliseconds. Your heart rate spikes, blood leaves your extremities, and floods your major muscle groups. Your digestive system shuts down. Your fine motor skills degrade. This is called the fight-or-flight response, and it is one of the most powerful physiological events a human body can produce. Here's what most men do not know. The difference between a man who freezes in a confrontation and a man who moves with clarity is not that one of them isn't afraid. It is that one of them has trained his nervous system to function inside that adrenaline dump instead of being paralyzed by it. The Mongol warriors trained under conditions that most modern men cannot even imagine. From childhood, Mongol boys were put on horses before they could walk properly. They hunted in brutal steppe winters. They trained in the Nerj, massive coordinated hunts where thousands of warriors would encircle wild animals over weeks, tightening the circle gradually, forcing the animals into a killing ground. These hunts were not just about food, they were specifically designed to simulate the chaos, the noise, the unpredictability, and the danger of real combat, so that when actual war came, the nervous system didn't recognize it as something new. It recognized it as something familiar. That is the principle. Familiarity kills paralysis. You cannot think your way out of a freeze response in real time. You have to have trained your way out of it beforehand. So what does this mean practically for a man today? If you have never trained any form of combat, boxing, wrestling, Muay Thai, Jiu-Jitsu, anything, you are operating with a massive blind spot. Not because you need to be a fighter, but because the act of training, of getting hit, of being in physical danger repeatedly in a controlled environment, rewires your nervous system. The first time you get punched in the face in a gym, you panic. The 10th time, you don't. The 50th time, you almost feel calm. Your body has learned that impact doesn't mean death, that chaos doesn't mean the end, that you can take something and keep functioning. This is not optional information for men. This is foundational. A man who has never been hit, who has never been in any kind of physical struggle, is carrying a fragility he doesn't even know he has until the moment it matters most. Now let's talk about the specific scenario. You're alone. Someone confronts you. They want to fight. Maybe they're bigger. Maybe they're escalating fast, and you have seconds to process what's happening. Here's what happens to almost every untrained man in this moment. The adrenaline hits, the brain goes offline, and they either freeze completely or they do something reactive and sloppy that makes the situation worse. They might say something stupid that escalates it. They might back up in a way that signals pure fear and invites aggression. They might throw a panicked, telegraphed swing that does nothing. All of these responses come from the same root. The brain being flooded with adrenaline and having no trained protocol to fall back on. The Mongol solution to this, and what elite fighters, soldiers, and dangerous men throughout history have all independently discovered, is pre-decided behavior. You decide what you will do before the situation happens, not during it, before it. Temujin, as a young man, was ambushed multiple times. There's a documented account from the Secret History of the Mongols, the oldest surviving Mongolian literary work, where he was hunted by the Taikud clan, captured, and had to escape. He survived not because he panicked and got lucky, but because he had developed a core operating principle. Assess, move, adapt. Not freeze, not panic. Assess, move, adapt. That's it. 3 words. That was his protocol. In a one-on-one confrontation today, your pre-decided behavior should be this. Stay upright. Keep your hands up naturally. Not in a fighting stance that escalates, but raised near your chest as if in a calm-down gesture, which protects your face and looks non-aggressive to witnesses. Keep your chin down and keep moving. Never plant your feet and stand still. Movement is life. A moving target is harder to hit. Movement also keeps your nervous system active instead of frozen. And here's the brutal truth most people don't want to hear. If you have genuinely exhausted every verbal option, and the threat is real and unavoidable, you act first. You do not wait to absorb the first blow and then respond. The man who acts first in a genuine physical confrontation has an enormous advantage. This is not aggression, this is physics. Genghis Khan never waited for his enemies to strike. He identified the threat, he confirmed it was real, and he moved before they could establish momentum. Every serious martial artist, every combat veteran, every man who has actually been in real danger will tell you the same thing. Hesitation is the enemy, not the opponent. Now the harder scenario. You're outnumbered. This is where most men completely fall apart mentally, because the math feels impossible. 3 people, 4 people, 5. It feels like the situation has already been decided before it starts. And that feeling of pre-defeat is more dangerous than the actual threat, because it makes you stop thinking strategically. Here is what the Mongols did when they were outnumbered, and they were repeatedly. In the early campaigns, Temujin's forces were often fighting larger armies. Their response was never to stand and absorb the pressure. Their response was to control space aggressively. The Mongol principle was this: never let the enemy choose the geometry of the fight. If the enemy wants to surround you, you move before the encirclement is complete. If the enemy wants to use their numbers in a wide formation, you force them into a narrow space where numbers stop mattering. The geography of a fight matters as much as the physical capability of the fighters. In a modern real-world scenario where you are surrounded by multiple people who want to hurt you, here's what this means practically. You do not stand in the middle, ever. You immediately move toward a wall, a corner, a car, any surface that eliminates your exposed back. You have just turned a 4-person problem into a problem where only 1 or 2 people can reach you at once. The Mongols called this controlling the terrain. In a street situation, it's the same principle. You deny them the geometry they need to overwhelm you. Second, and this is counterintuitive, you identify the most dangerous person in the group immediately, and you do not take your eyes off them. In a group confrontation, there is almost always one person driving the aggression. The others are feeding off their energy. If that person is neutralized or shaken, the group dynamic often collapses. Groups of cowardly men are still, at their core, cowardly men. The bravery is collective and fragile. The Mongols knew that rooting the leader, killing the general, breaking the command structure often ended battles instantly. The same psychology applies on a smaller scale. Third, you make noise. Loud, aggressive, deliberate noise. This is not screaming in panic. This is projecting. Loud, assertive commands. Get back, stop, back up. This does 2 things. It attracts attention from potential witnesses or help, and it activates your own physiology. Projecting sound forces you to breathe, keeps your diaphragm engaged, and prevents the shallow breathing that accelerates panic. Mongol warriors were documented to let out battle cries, not just to intimidate enemies, but to regulate their own bodies during combat. But here is the deepest lesson. The thing underneath all the tactics, every single thing the Mongols built, their military dominance, their psychological invincibility, their reputation that made entire cities surrender without fighting, was built on one foundational belief that Temujin instilled in his warriors from the very beginning. The outcome of this moment does not define me. My response to this moment defines me. This sounds simple. It is not simple. Most men, in the moment of real physical threat, are secretly trying to protect their image. Their ego is loudly calculating. What will people think if I lose this? What will people think if I show fear? What will people think if I back down? And that calculation, that ego noise, is consuming processing power that your body desperately needs for threat assessment, spatial awareness, and motor execution. The Mongol warrior did not fight to look brave. He fought because fighting was his function. The outcome, win, lose, live, die, was secondary to execution. This is not a nihilistic death wish. It is freedom. When you release your grip on how the moment looks and put everything into how the moment is executed, you become genuinely dangerous because you stop holding back, you stop performing, you stop protecting your image, you just move. There is a story about a Mongol general named Subutai, arguably the greatest military mind in history, responsible for more than 65 victories. Across 3 decades of campaigning, he was once surrounded with a small force deep in enemy territory. Cut off, vastly outnumbered, his men looked to him for the panic response that the situation seemed to demand. He reportedly looked at his officers and said something to the effect of, "We are already past the point where fear is useful, so let's be useful instead." They fought their way out. Not because the math changed, but because they stopped giving energy to the fear and gave everything to the execution. That is the method. That is the thing you can steal. Not the tactics alone. The tactics matter. Train them, build them. But underneath the tactics is this: a man who has decided, in advance, that he will not give his energy to fear in the critical moment, only to movement, only to action, only to execution, is a man that very few situations can truly break. So let me leave you with this. Physical confrontation, real danger, real pressure, is one of the rawest tests of who a man actually is. Not who he says he is, who he is. And the preparation for that test is not just physical, it is psychological. It is the daily practice of doing hard things when you don't want to, training when you're tired, having the hard conversation when it's easier to stay quiet, standing your ground in small moments so that in the big moment, standing your ground is already a habit your body knows. Genghis Khan was not born a conqueror. He was forged into one. By hardship, by loss, by confronting terrifying situations repeatedly and refusing to let them be the last word on who he was. You have that same forge available to you every single day. The question is whether you're willing to step into it. If this hit different, if this gave you something real, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it helps this channel reach more men who need to hear this. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe. We do not make soft content here. We make content for men who are serious about becoming dangerous, capable, and genuinely hard to break. That's what this channel is, and we're just getting started.